Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Be Iconic. No stranger to any of you is Dr. Udine Harry, board certified and integrative and medical expert. She has been delivering a healthy dose of truth serum to women across the globe. The author of 3 books, most notably the namesake of this show, Be Iconic, she has been an advocate for women living and loving themselves throughout the ages. Welcome back, Dr. Harry. So great to join you this week.
Oh, yes, it's good to be here.
So this week's title is like hot, flashy, frumpy. So what does that mean for everyone? So we're going to talk a little bit about menopause and weight gain and everything that goes along with that. So I have to start by asking you, what is menopause? For most people, they have no idea.
That's a really good question, and I love it when you asked me before we were talking, do you gain weight with menopause? And for all the menopausal women out there are going, are you kidding me? Of course you gain weight with menopause. But menopause medically is really when you're getting to that age where you stop ovulating, kind of run out of eggs, and it's really defined as not having your period for 12 months or greater. So skipping a period here and there does not really make you menopausal. And when we're talking about chemically is where the hormonal thing starts changing, and that special hormone in the brain that that really talks to the ovary, that starts changing as well.
Now, what age would someone actually start menopause? And does it depend on the age? So would you be later in menopause if you started later with your cycle, or does that, what plays into that?
Not necessarily at all. And so the age around that many women start experiencing menopausal symptoms, usually anywhere from 45 to 55. That's usually the most common ages. There's some women who experience it earlier, of course, and it's not necessarily related to when you started your period. One thing that it may be related to, though, that hormonal imbalance, or maybe letting your hormone drop like faster than it may have, is elevated stress levels may actually contribute to this a little bit as well.
I know so many women out here who are listening can relate to the elevated stress, and we've talked about what that does to your body. But how long does menopause actually last? Because we talk a little bit about the effects and what it is, but does anything play into how long you can actually go through perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause?
Well, if you ask some women, I mean, they're still going through it, 10 years later. So here's the thing. It can start up to about 5 years before, sometimes even a little bit early. That's the time that we call perimenopause, meaning around menopause, when hormonal levels actually start changing. And when I say hormonal levels, I'm talking, because we have a ton of hormones in our body, right? So let me be really specific. So the sex hormone levels, so we're talking about the estrogen and the testosterone and the progesterone. Those are the ones having to do usually with fertility and reproductive health. And so the body is really designed to, what happens during your regular cycle, let's start with that. What happens during your regular cycle is that your estrogen levels starts increasing, and that kind of starts building the lining. Let's in preparation, let's say if you got pregnant, and then you will ovulate. And when you ovulate, then your other hormonal level starts coming in here, and that's progesterone. And then that starts preparing that lining for possible, again, if you get pregnant, for implantation. And if that doesn't happen, then you have a period and the cycle starts all over again. So what's happening here? Ovulation is what happens, and that kind of keeps the cycle going. So when the ovaries, which are down here, they're the ones that make the estrogen and the progesterone and things like that. And so then their function starts decreasing gradually until they no longer really produce significant amounts of that. And so then the cycle stops.
Okay. And so, you know, one of the things that so many women who haven't gone through it yet, and you and I were talking before we got started, was really about the signs and the symptoms. And some of us have gone through, even through COVID, you've gone through hot flashes and night sweats. And so what are some of the symptoms that, you know, a woman can start to, once they start to see that, they really can start to get an idea, maybe I am entering into the first stage of this?
Well, you mentioned a few things there: hot flashes, right? Night sweats, difficulty falling asleep. That's really something that happens to women. Or, and a lot of women out there can probably relate to this, you're sleeping and then all of a sudden you get so hot and then you throw the covers off and then you start getting so cold and you pull the covers back on. And so you're kind of up, tossing and turning all night, or you'll be in the middle of the meeting and you just start sweating for no reason. It's not particularly hot. And so oftentimes for women, that is not only is it not comfortable, you start feeling really self-conscious about it. Also, at that time, you can start gaining weight, again, hormonal levels. And without really getting into like anything super specific or sciencey, what happens is that your hormonal levels kind of keep your fat, your metabolism burning normally and the fat cells normally. And then what happens when that starts changing, it becomes more difficult for you to lose weight. Other things that can happen is that really women at that point become more susceptible to osteoporosis or weakening of the bones. And that's when our risk for heart disease goes up to kind of match a male's risk at that point. Because again, hormonal things play so much of a role in there. So those things start changing. So ultimately what I say, it's not a bad thing. It's just really a thing where you go, listen, this is where we really have to start paying attention thing, because those things that we kind of blew off, they're like the exercise, the eating right, all of that other stuff that we were like, oh, I'm 20-something, I don't have to do that. Now you have to do that because you really have no backup plan.
Yeah. No, and you know, we've talked a lot about what you feel physically, but what are some of the things just even mentally that go on during this time and that someone may think, am I really going crazy? Like, what is going on?
Yes, that's a really, really good question. Irritability really goes up. And I usually tell people around women when they say, oh, women get irritable around their cycles, which is but I said, you know, a woman going into menopause can become really irritable. Now that's irritability. You get a very short temper, losing the patience. Their moods can swing. They can now become hyper anxious, or they can start experiencing depression, because believe it or not, your hormonal levels play a role in your mental health as well. Like estrogen helps with depression, progesterone helps with sleep and anxiety. So those female hormones actually can contribute to keeping you like less anxious and helping you to sleep better and making you less irritable. And when those go away, you have to depend on your other things, such as your neurotransmitter levels, and you're depending more heavily on them now. And they tend to start going down as well. So some women can really experience significant mood swings during menopause. It's really not you. It's your hormonal levels are changing. And this is something that you don't really have to go through. You can speak to your physician about it and what is the best course of action for me. Should I do hormonal therapy? Is there something else that would work for me? Because this is not just a nuisance for some. Some women sail through it beautifully, and they have. My mother was one of those annoying women. I just have stopping my period. That's it. And then, but there are a lot of us who really experience intense symptoms, and those symptoms can become more intensely so because of stress. And I'll tell you why I'm saying that, because believe it or not, your stress hormone levels and your hormonal levels that control whether you go through menopause or not, they're made by the same thing. So they have the same starting ingredient, if you will. Like cholesterol is responsible for making all of those things. Ultimately. So what's happening here? Think about it. If you have a certain amount of resources and you're dividing it up, and then one part starts hogging all of that resources, there's less resources going towards the other part, right? And so that is sometimes why stress can make that feel worse. And it starts affecting, and we'll talk about adrenal glands at another time, but that's the real glands that are responsible for your stress responses. And it really starts affecting them, because they ultimately, the way a menopause nicely is supposed to be is that when the ovaries shut down, the adrenal glands, and those are glands, again, they control stress, but they also make some hormones as well, right? So they don't make as much, obviously, but they make a little bit of it. And so they're supposed to kind of help you transition through, right? But if you're super stressed out, it's not going to do that. It's just going to disrupt everything and become super imbalanced, and you may start experiencing more symptoms.
So that's, one of the things that I think about when we talk about menopause in general is that a lot of women actually, visualize this as something that's really negative. And it's not something that they look forward to. What are some of the things that are the positives of what's going on in your body and how you can embrace this time and really make it more of a positive experience rather than, what we talked about, the negative points that
yeah, it's definitely does not have to be, because many times I think what's happening is that we start associating menopause with getting older and less relevant and less vital and less attractive. And so we put all of these things on menopause. And I say we collectively as a society, because obviously as women, we don't want that to happen, right? I mean, and we don't feel that way. So ultimately, what I start saying, I experience, think of menopause as freedom, okay? Freedom to just really kind of live life, because at that point, think about it, if most of the time children are grown, they're off to college, you're not gonna get pregnant anymore, you don't have to have a period, because you know when your period shows up, when you go on vacation, the time it shows up every time, like clockwork. You could have just had it a week ago. You're on vacation, it shows up. So you're not thinking, do I have my tampons or do I have whatever it is that I use? And so it's really, it's like a freedom, or embracing. It's kind of allowing you, because honestly, at this point, you have gathered like so much information over the course of your life, and you now know what you want. And now you have the freedom to kind of go after that. And you have choices now. So if you're having like a lot of symptoms, you can take care of that. That does not have to disrupt your life. So you not having a period of going through menopause doesn't make you less than anybody. I think it's really more about embracing freedom, right? Embracing freedom. And so what I want to say, full disclosure here, I am like 54 years old. So it's not like I'm way away from that, okay? So it's not like I don't, as a physician, I know what I'm talking about. As a woman, I know what I'm talking about. So this is the time of your lives, women, where I want you to embrace everything. And if your health and be in charge of your health and your body, yeah? This is a time where you're saying, listen, if these things can potentially happen, what can I do to prevent them? And so it's a time where you start like just being more active, and the more active you are. So there are ways to really manage a lot of the symptoms that you're experiencing.
Yeah. You talk a lot about diet and exercise, and I have to ask, or we'd be remiss to bring this up, but are there any tools as it relates to changing your diet, adding some stuff to your diet, also exercise, that can help this be a more positive experience than some of the negative symptoms or the negativity that we see around kind of this, I think of it as an evolution of the kind of the next stage of your life. Yeah.
It is. I love that. You said that exactly right. It is the next stage of your life. And so exercise can absolutely help, because you know what? If one thing is changing, something else is happening. So what exercise can do, exercise can actually change the brain and flood the body with other chemicals that can make you feel good. Exercise helps you to maintain that muscle mass that we want to maintain, so we can have balance and strength. The foods that we eat, we want to make sure that we have foods that are high in calcium, right? We want to make sure that we have foods that really contain good magnesium content, because those things really help to support our bones and our heart health. We want to make sure that we have good essential fatty acids in there, because that can kind of help us to balance out some of the dryness that may happen. It just means that we need a little bit more of those things. So we definitely want our vegetables and our nuts and omega-3s. And this is a time actually where you can start using some fermented soy products. That actually not only helps you to, of course, if you don't have any allergies to it, but helps you to maintain a healthier skin and a better tone. And so all of these things you can really, it's just a time, Lisa, where you just have to pay more attention to your lifestyle. And that is not a bad thing.
Yeah. So we have a question, and this actually, I want to jump to that one really quickly about a doctor. But one of the things is, can your doctor actually tell if you're going through the change? So is there a predictive way that doctors can say, hey, during this age and this age, you should start entering into perimenopause? What does that look like, and how can women get checked?
Well, here's the thing is that what your doctor will measure is something called FSH, right? Or follicular stimulating hormone. And that's like the hormone in the brain that talks to the ovaries, because and then the ovaries usually produce what it asks for, and then that level goes down. So now what's happening here is that when that is, so your doctor will check that, and that starts going up when the ovarian function starts going down. So your doctor in can say, oh, like 6 years, in 6 years, you're going to go through menopause. That may not necessarily be predictable, but what they can start doing is measuring that level along with some other levels that they can measure to see where you are, how balanced you are. With that, do you need balancing? You might need somebody who, really kind of dives in there and looks at all the hormonal levels to see which one might need supporting, and if maybe your stress levels need supporting.
Okay. Is there any instance where a woman may want to slow down the menopause process? And if so, is that something, is that part of kind of hormonal therapy? What's your stance on that? And what are the instances that you think women should even consider that as an option?
Well, here's the thing, like slowing down the menopausal process. Stopping your body from doing what it does normally, I'm not really on board with that. But I think there are times where you can, if you're experiencing significant symptoms and you don't have any risk factors against hormonal therapy, that's another discussion that needs to be had with your physicians, because some women are not really good candidates for hormonal therapy, and some women are excellent candidates for hormonal therapy. And sometimes, doctors will start you on hormonal therapy because it can improve your symptoms dramatically. If you're struggling, it can make you feel better. It can improve your moods. If you're really having a challenging time going through menopause and you're having a lot of symptoms, your doctor can actually start you on hormonal therapy to help you manage those symptoms. And no, there have been some studies, Lisa, about whether estrogen helps to prevent dementia, and we know that hormones, of course, help to keep our bones stronger. And so there's some questions and some studies right now. Is that does continuing hormonal therapy reduce a woman's risk of heart disease? These are all questions that have not been definitively answered, and therefore they have to be treated individually, depending on that person and what their history is and what's going on with them.
That makes sense. Dr. Harry, I have to ask you, because you in your, just every day within your practice, you see a lot of women who struggle with the part of, what does this mean for me next? And if they're having all of the symptoms that you have spoken of, the hot flashes, trouble sleeping, they are experiencing weight gain, and on some level, even the blues. So their, emotions are going up and down. What's one thing that you would say to them, especially, I know that you're well known for your kind of truth serum, but what's one thing, a message that you would give to them about what they can do to kind of counter that, and then also take a step forward?
Okay, so the important thing is not to deny what's going on and just be honest and forthright with it. And usually you don't have to be, your family members will be more than happy to let you know. Because recently I had a patient, called me up and say, yeah, you remember those things that you gave a talk, you were talking about those things. I have no idea what you're talking about. Now I know what you're talking about. And her family was in the background saying, yeah, do something about it for her. You know, so it's really, your family members will notice it. So what I say to women, don't attach your self-worth or whether you're uh, vital or you contribute anything to whether you're going through menopause or not. That has nothing to do with your light, with your attractiveness, with your ability to command. It has nothing to do with that. What it is that your body is going through some changes and it's asking for some help. So let's figure out how to best help your body. And so a lot of times, even though when we're struggling with these things, we also struggle with, well, because we are in a society that tends to want to kind of put people in a certain box. And so oftentimes we feel like, we have to do all of these things just to hang on to something. But then we kind of miss the beauty of where we are right now. So if you're having those symptoms, absolutely, they should be addressed. No one should have to put up with that at all. So they need to be addressed. And so it would depend on, again, like I said, individually, how best to address it. So some people may need hormonal therapy or may qualify for hormonal therapy, but may be really good candidates for it. Other people might be better candidates for herbal therapy. Other people, believe it or not, sometimes antidepressants are used here, not necessarily because they seem to have an impact on hot flashes and things along those lines as well. So it really depends on that woman that's sitting in front of me. Would depend on what we talked about. We want to talk about her belief system, what she, and also what's going on in her life as well, because we know certain things make hormonal symptoms worse. Alcohol makes hot flashes worse, makes insomnia worse, makes night sweats worse. So alcohol will negatively impact your going through menopause. Smoking does that as well. Eating a lot of processed foods can make your symptoms work. So it's like really looking at the whole picture and addressing all of it. Because right now you've gotten to this point right now, right? I mean, you've done it. You're here. You've accomplished what your career, your kids. You have so much more to give, and you want to feel vital giving it. And I don't really think there should be any reason that we should get older and start feeling less relevant and start feeling that we have less to contribute and start feeling that we have to give up on everything that we've ever dreamt about because now we are too old for it.
No, and you know what? I had one question come in, and so I do want to acknowledge the fact that what would you recommend for women who maybe are starting or feel like they're getting ready to go through menopause, but have yet to have their first child or are planning or wanting to have another child? What would be some of the things that you would say to them?
So it's really important that you chat with a doctor, fertility specialist, because you want to check to see where you are in terms of the condition, the eggs that you may have available. So you really want to see where you are in that. And their fertility specialist and and your doctor can really do quite a few labs to see where you are fertility wise. They'll do an ultrasound to tell you and give you an honest evaluation of where you are. Now that I have seen that evaluation come back with like, oh, you don't have any eggs. I don't know if you're going to get pregnant. And then the person gets pregnant. So all you need is one good egg usually. But they will give you that evaluation so you can better plan. Because, you may want to start thinking about harvesting eggs. And this is a very complicated question. If you're starting to experience some of those symptoms, and keep in mind that menopause is not the only thing that can bring these symptoms on as well. So go get evaluated. Your thyroid functioning normally? Did you know thyroid function can make your hormones not really function that well? It can really impact fertility and all of that. So you may really want to have all of it just evaluated first. And the more information you have, the better decision you can really make.
No, that's this has been super helpful for women on both sides of the coin. I have to say, one of the things that it keeps coming up in our chat box there, what kind of doctors should you see if you think you're getting ready to go through menopause?
Okay, so if you think you're getting ready to go through menopause, a couple of things that I want you to make sure, and I'm going to throw in here, yes, it is October, it's Cancer Awareness Month, so I'm going to ask everyone to please be conscious of that. And if you're 40, recommendations start having mammograms, which is really important. It also it really is part of your evaluation for hormonal therapy to see where you are there, looking at your family history. That's really important. The you can go to gynecologists for that. There are many practitioners who also do hormonal therapy as well. So the family physicians do hormonal therapy. I do some hormonal therapy. It's really, it's knowing where you are though. So it's really important that, you start with basic things like, have you been getting a mammogram if you're concerned about your breast or your recommended age, and PAPs, and all of those things are part of hormonal health. So it's really important. Are you doing a monthly self-breast exam? All of that is part of hormonal health. So if you're thinking you're experiencing, just make sure all of that is in line. And then depending on your symptoms, what your lab work shows, and what your family history is, and what your own history is. Because if you have a history, for example, of blood clots like Serena Williams has had, you may not be a really good candidate for that. So it really is very person and individually dependent.
No, thank you, Dr. Harry. We're almost at time. So I do want to open this up. What's your last thought for women, especially, as they're hitting that 42, 41 years and up to 60 and going through all of these changes and trying to just come to terms with their body? What's your last gem you want women to leave with today?
And I love what you said, coming to terms with your body, because bodies change as we get. The body you have, the body I had when I was 25, not the body I have now. So, like we said, when I'm beating myself up about it, I can really enjoy the body I have now, because the body I have now is not going to be the one I have when I'm 70.
Yes.
So it's just really appreciating where you are now, but trying to be just in the best possible health. So for me, it's being able to move as freely as I want to. It's just feeling energized and vital, and all of those things are really important to me. So that's what I think about at any age. So wanting to be something that has passed is a lot of wasted energy.
Yeah.
You cannot bring it back. Focus on what you have now and making the best of that. You never want to look back and say, oh my gosh, I looked amazing then. Why did I spend all my time being so obsessed about stuff and I didn't enjoy it at all? I'm telling you, enjoy it now.
There you go. There's nothing else to say with that. Enjoy it now, embrace yourself. Listen, if you all want to connect with Dr. Harry one-on-one, you have the opportunity where she's still setting up telehealth appointments. You can reach out at www.drharrymd.com. You should see the website floating across the screen. You also can get that one-on-one as well as a group of accountability partners through the private Facebook group. It's Be Your Own Icon. How powerful is that? Turn into the person that you want to be. And start envisioning that. And she gives you all of those tips and tricks, videos, content, and then you have other women that are there cheering you on. You do not want to miss being part of that Facebook group. As always, we thank you guys for joining. And until next week, live, laugh, and be iconic. Bye, Dr. Harry. Thanks.
Bye-bye.